just talk after that kind of song and after that kind of prayer, Mike. Thank you. Would you let me share with you as a church leader for almost 40 years? I don't claim to have the only perspective about what I'm going to say. I don't claim that what I say is perfectly God's will, because I'm not sure I know perfectly God's will. I often, when I sit here and get ready to come up and speak to you, just an awesome responsibility comes upon you. I pray for God to accentuate the things that are of Him that are in what I think, and to protect you from the things that are from me. And I don't know the difference. You understand that, right? I mean, I'm going to share what I think. I'm going to share it forcibly, but I'm smart enough to know that I don't always get it right. Why am I a Baptist? I've thought about that a lot. Most of us are Baptists because our mother was, or we married one. That's true, too. Just we won't take a poll, but now, why have I stayed a Baptist? I mean, people say, well, it's the perfect... If there was a perfect denomination and you joined it, you'd screw it up. So get over it. There are no perfect denominations. I think what calls my heart is this last song about the nations. Evangelism, missions. These things call to me in the night. These things are always in the back of my mind. I do remember what it was like to be lost. I do remember what it's like not to be able to go to sleep at night, afraid of God, afraid of consequences of choices. I do remember that. And it's not that I want to make everybody like us, but I want everybody to have the opportunity to know Him. Does that make sense? And whatever it takes. Now, I've come up against what I think is a theological dilemma. I've shared it with you in several contexts, and I hope you will just let me struggle through this and then present to you this last part of the Great Commission. I believe the gospel is absolutely free in the finished work of Jesus Christ and the grace of God plus nothing. I want to say that again. That salvation is absolutely free to anyone and everyone through the heart of God, the work of Christ, and the wooing of the Spirit. And whosoever will may come, and when they come, it is freely and fully given to them, without reserve, without condition. I believe that with all my heart. But I also believe that the missing corollary is that the gospel is a cost everything, 24/7 life commitment. Now, it is so hard to try to hold those two together. And I think we err on two sides. One, come, pray this prayer, and that's all you have to do. And I don't agree with that. Or work, and if you fail some way, you're lost. And I don't agree with that. I'm in this terrible tension. And this tension is that what I want to give is free. But the minute you understand it and receive it, it is so awesome. It is so life-changing. It is so calling and alluring and haunting and driving that we can't ever be the same again. And it so reorients every priority. It so changes the worldview. It moves from the fallenness of what's in it to me to the Christian of what can I do for others. It is a ripping, gut-changing, mind-boggling, wow, reorientation. And I grieve as a pastor, as an evangelist, as a teacher. I grieve that in our society there is no noticeable difference between the society and the people who claim to be followers of Jesus Christ. Now, what happens with me because of that, and my personality and my teaching style, this hammer comes out. I am really a nice guy, but when I get up here, I turn into a hatchet man for God. I mean, I'll scalp the world and then spit on the sore. I mean, it's terrible. It's what it scares me sometimes. I sit down and go, holy moly, what did I just do? You know? I think Christians, whether they understand how, have a longing for more. And I think we search for that. And I think sometimes we find it in a wonderful praise music, which I'm so affirming. But that's not enough. Or they find it in spiritual gifts. And I am a supporter of spiritual gifts, all of them. That's why I make Baptists so nervous. Well, I believe in the fullness of the Spirit. All the gifts are valid today. But that is not enough. And I'm committed to education. But I've met some PhD duds. Just wet wicks. Education won't do it. So we're talking about discipleship. I'm haunted by the fact that I'm commanded by Jesus as one of his last purposeful acts. Commanded now to go into all the world and make disciples, not make decisions. Now, when I share my faith, I do it in a form that I'm asking for a decision. But it is crucial that the church somehow follow up on that decision and follow up quickly and radically and purposefully and continually on that decision. Because I worry in my world about baby Christians with all the spiritual misinformation and the spiritual counterfeits and the false teachers that are in our society. And if I can't get a new believer grounded or on the road to being grounded, I worry about them. I really worry about them. And in many of, I think, of true conversions, there is a spiritual abortion that occurs. And that is where a life has truly met Jesus Christ, but for whatever reason, it gets confused, it gets wounded, it gets deceived, it gets captured, and the purpose of God for that life is lost. For I see the purpose of evangelism not that you get to go to heaven. The purpose of evangelism is the kingdom has another worker. We are saved to serve. 1 Corinthians 12, verse 7 haunts me, where it says we are gifted for the common good. Now, you have a gift that is desperately needed for the health and growth of this body. That's why I'm worried about a church this size with this kind of dynamic worship service that attracts people who stay peripheral. It's easy to hide in a seat in a church this big. And then Christianity turns into an event. It turns into an hour in a building. It turns in, I heard Mark say, to a spiritual fix. Now, it's not that is not a wonderful thing, the excitement of gathered worship. But if all you know about Christianity is you prayed a prayer somewhere in the past, and you enjoy 1 hour getting together every now and then, you just haven't seen the fullness of this wonderful thing. So how do I talk about that? Well, I must admit, when somebody says the word discipleship, I wonder in the back of my mind, what do they mean by that? Because I've read these books, and I pick on youth directors sometimes. You know, they go to camp and they hand out a little sheet that says 10 steps to spiritual maturity. Really? And it's usually stuff like pray at 5 o'clock in the morning. Don't cuss anymore. I know a whole lot of people who try that stuff. They turn into legalistic, judgmental, spiritual people. I don't think there is 10 steps to spiritual growth for everybody. So I think there's some fluidity here. I don't think I can answer this question. But I would say to you, is there a hunger in you this morning for more? More of Him. More availability for you. Do you want to know more? Would you like to be more involved? I guess that's the question. And I don't want to fuss about the many that aren't. I want to talk to those of you who want to do more but don't know how. I was in a conference just yesterday with small church pastors in Texas. These are men who all their life have pastored churches of less than 125 members. And I shared what I shared on Wednesday. And thank you all for coming on Wednesday. God bless you. Hundreds of you came to. Thank you for that hunger for interpreting the Bible. Thank you. I shared that with them, and this man came up to me and said, I don't know where to start. I never want to preach again. I said, well, brother, that wasn't the purpose of what I shared with you. But that haunted me when here's a man who's pastored said, I don't know where to start. How many Christians are there that don't know where to start? So let's talk about what discipleship is. If I did a word study, I would know the word's not used but one or two times in the Old Testament and not in the way it's used in the New. If I went to the New Testament, I would know that the word is mathetes. It's used 264 times in the Gospels, primarily for the 12. These men that God called through Jesus Christ to leave their families, to leave their businesses, and to follow this itinerant, unofficial rabbi, to be with him, to learn with him for a number of years. A radical commitment. As I move in primarily to Acts, the word becomes used in a synonymous way with words like follower, believer, those who have faith, those who are in the way, meaning the Christian community. So it's a word that primarily means a learner, an adherent. It's somebody who commits themselves to. And the early use of this was to be with Jesus. Now, very few could be with Jesus as the 12 are. Is there a real difference between what Jesus did with the 12 and what discipleship is today? Well, I was thinking in this very text that we're looking at, every time I think about this, I really get tickled. I remember a story by John Bisagno when he first left Del City, Oklahoma, and went to First Houston. And the story is that he went and looked around, and I was thinking about, they called him his pastor. He was thinking about it. And he went across the street to the travel agent and asked how long it took to fly from Houston back to Oklahoma City. And the lady said, it's 40 minutes. And he said, how long is the bus? And she said, well, it's 8 hours. And he said, give me a ticket for the bus. And this lady said, you're afraid to fly, aren't you? I know who you are. You're the prospective new pastor. Don't you know God's going to be with you? He said, lady, it says, lo, I am with you always. Would you grant me that this last phrase in the Great Commission, and lo, I myself, very emphatic in Greece, lo, I myself am with you always, even to the end of the age. I think that Jesus is with modern disciples in a spiritual sense as intimately as he was with the 12. Now, I don't think it's him personally, because I think he's seated at the right hand of God. But this is the deal about if I leave, the Holy Spirit will come, and he'll help you into all truth, and he'll teach you what is of me. I think we have an intimacy with the triune God on a level with the 12. Now, I want to talk about the 12 for a minute. You see, I don't think discipleship is instantaneous, doing everything right or being mature. No. Let's look at these guys. How often, particularly in the Gospel of Mark, does it talk about their unbelief? That they said, the Bible says they did not understand. Jesus marveled at their unbelief. These are the 12 now. The 12. These guys didn't get it. Many of them, and most of them, and maybe all of them didn't get it till after the resurrection, and Jesus appeared and said, now let me tell you what it's all about. Really? So you mean that from the initial encounter with Jesus to follow me, which was a radical call to them, that they still didn't get it for a period of time? Do you mean discipleship may be a process? That salvation may be a process? And I challenge them, and there are many of you who are highly educated people, many of you trained in theological ways. I submit to you, if you'll check the verb tenses on the word sozo, salvation, save, you will find that it's used in the aorist, past tense, in the perfect, past act with abiding results, with the present, continual action, and with the future, shall be. Which means that salvation is a relationship. It's not a ticket. It's not a product. It's an encounter that grows more intimate. And all of us are in process. All of us are in process. The easiest way for me to say this, I think this is metaphorical, of course. I saw this cartoon one time, had a picture of Zeus sitting on a cloud with a lightning bolt, and the caption said, metaphorical, I'll show you metaphorical. It's a symbol. It's a figurative way of speaking. I think we have to talk about a door in the spiritual life. There's a door with a handle on our side. When it comes to salvation, we become aware of our sin, and we're willing to open that door for Jesus to come in. I think that same spiritual door must be opened for discipleship and maturity. The Christian life is as supernatural an event as salvation is a supernatural event. Discipleship is as impossible for people as salvation is for people. This has to be a grace act. It has to be an empowering of God. And all we can do is make ourselves available, i.e., open the spiritual door. And I guess what I'm asking you this morning, I'm going to talk a little more about it. I want you to open the spiritual door of your life. Not to be saved, but to allow Him to use you. I want you to open the door for the rest of the week. I want you to open the door for your availability. I want you to open the door for your spiritual giftedness to flow and function and mature. Now, how do we do that? How do we do that? Well, the text we're talking about, the Great Commission, the second half of it, teaching them all that I commanded you. Now, that's a pretty good task. Go make disciples, not decisions, disciples. You baptize them and you teach them. Now, Baptist churches have been real good about emphasizing baptism. And I think I'm committed. That's an initial act that Jesus did and commanded us to do. I think we ought to do it, period, in discussion. But we have not been good at the other. I look in the associational records of Baptist churches, and some of them baptize 100, which is a great evangelistic thrust. Thank God for churches that have a heart for evangelism. And the Sunday school never grows. Which means the back door is wider open than the front door. Which means that baby Christians are not followed up on. Which means that we are too committed to making notches on our belt than disciples for the kingdom. May I say that again? We're too concerned with the numbers for the association than we are for mature servants in the church of Jesus Christ. Now, the way to solve that is to close the back door. And we close the back door in several ways. Number one, and I want to say it, I've tried to say it several times since I've been here. If you're saved, you are a called, gifted minister of Jesus Christ. That's a change of mentality. If you're saved, get away with ordination. Get away with clergy. That's all unbiblical development. If you are saved, you have a gift that God gave you at salvation to bless and help and grow the church of Jesus Christ. Which means that the best thing that any church can do is to help you find your niche, find your calling, and then train you, encourage you, and support you to fulfill that, whatever it is. Now, you buy that with me so far? Which means that as much and as wonderful as we do on this stage, be it programs at Christmas and Easter, be it wonderful music every Sunday, be it preaching you enjoy, being it speakers we bring in so you'll come, it's not enough. And if that's all there is, it's the most anemic form of Christianity the world has ever known. This is not a spectator religion. This is a participator religion. Now, we got to find your niche. Now, in a church like this, it's just amazing the plethora of opportunities. That's one of the advantages to a church like this. So I want to say this to you. If you were in a room all by yourself, and time wasn't an issue, and education wasn't an issue, and money wasn't an issue, and you could dream and think, what would I like to do for God? What floats my boat spiritually? What do I think about it? When I see it or hear it or see a book about it, I always look at it. What is that thing that kind of charges you? I think that the way we find our spiritual gift is we pray specifically, God, what is my place in the church? What we often call that, God, what is your will for my life? Then we, think with me now, we ask mature Christians that know us, what strengths do you see in my life? I had no idea that I was a teacher. I thought I was a pastor. And people started saying, no. Others see it quicker than we do. Find people you trust and just say, what strengths do you see in my life? And then look for open doors of opportunity. And when you try something, not forever, but when you try something and you start seeing that people are blessed by it and you get great joy in it, when these things start coming together, the desire of your heart, the prayer of your heart, an opportunity to try it, and it seems like it fits really well. When these four start coming together, I think you found it. Now, here's what's happening in the Baptist churches today. We find a few people who want to serve Jesus, and we put them on every committee and make them do everything. How many of you are burnt out? Would you raise your hand? You lie. Or I got a whole group of those who don't do anything. We'll burn you out. We got this on this week and this on this week and do this and this committee. I think we're going to have, I want to say to you, look at me, will you? No is a spiritual answer. When people ask you to do more and more and you've got too much on your plate, no is a spiritual answer. What we're doing is saying yes to too many good things, a few of us, robbing us of doing what we've been called to. The worst enemy of your call is good things. Find what you're called to do. Say no to everything else. Train for that. Join your arms with others. Now, what that means is that we've got to find your niche. Now, we asked the visitors when they came in to fill out that little tear-off sheet in your bulletin. I'm going to ask you to fill out that thing for something else. Right now, I'm going to ask you to get your bulletin out. If you'll turn on the back, there's a place for prayer request. I want you to put down there, what is it that you would like to have an opportunity to do? Do you want to learn how to pray? I thought the other day, I'm pushing evangelism. I think evangelism is the will of the church, missions. But I do not think that all of you are evangelists. And I think we all need to be trained so we can help our children and help those that we come in contact with and those divine appointments that God offers. But the truth is, we're all not going to do that every day. What we ought to do is get people who are committed to sharing their faith and link them up with people who are committed to helping new Christians grow and people who are committed to pray and have evangelistic teams that function independent from regular church visitation. And these teams made up of 5 or 6 people are going to be winning people, bringing people, and I don't care if they bring them here or wherever. This is not a more for me deal. This is a more for him deal. Would you like to be a part of an evangelistic team where you stop everything you do or go to a place and pray for an hour and a half while others visit and share? Would you like to take a new Christian and show them the New Testament and the Old Testament and begin to teach them how to pray and talk to God and bring them to a warm, loving life group and help them to come to some kind of training? Are you willing to do that? I hope you'll put down, I'll be a part of an evangelistic team to pray, to help a new Christian be involved. I want to share my faith. But maybe that's just not your thing. Maybe you want to learn how to do something else. And maybe it has nothing to do with the church. You may want to be involved in the Buckters ministry some way, outside of these walls during the week. You may want to be involved in helping people with the Red Cross. I think there are wonderful ways we can be involved as long as we do it for Jesus. We give a cup of water in His name. The intentionality is, as a Christian, I feel called to do this. Brothers and sisters, what do you feel called to do? What can we help you do? Do you want to be a teacher? Let us know so we can get you into a training program and get you into a classroom where you can substitute teach and be with a good teacher. Do you want to be a prayer warrior? Let us help you get into our prayer room and begin to just 1 hour a week begin to hear the comments of the needs of the church and the answers to prayer. Please, the world is as wide as God's desire in your heart. But may I say to you, there's more to Christianity than sitting in a pew or dancing in an aisle. The joy is in involvement. We gather together not to say, wasn't that a great sermon? We gather together to encourage each other so we can send every one of the believers of this body out into a world to serve and love and help in His name. The best analogy that I know for a church is an outpatient clinic. We go into the world and we open up and we get kicked right in the teeth for it. And we come together and get healed and get trained and get motivated and go right back into the world to open right back up to the very people who kicked us the day before. We are servants. We are saved to serve. We are not saved to get. We are not saved for more. We are not saved because we're the elect few, the wonderful few, the elite few. We're sinners saved by grace, called to serve, gifted to serve, and will never be happy. Our hearts will never be full until we find that gift and ministry that God has called us to. What would you like to do for God? What would you like to do? Don't limit it. What would you like to do for God? Put it on that form. Let these wonderful gifted staff people that we have see if they know a ministry like that, are willing to start an opportunity here. We'll come beside you. The best analogy I know for paid staff is player coaches. Player coaches. They're willing to help if they know. We want you more involved. Maybe for whatever reason, all you can do, all you want to do, is be involved in the parking lot ministry of greeting guests. I want to tell you, one of the most significant things I've seen in growing large churches is loving people in that parking lot, the first people meet. And when it's raining and you're out there, I want to tell you, people take notice. Maybe that's what you want to do. I'm not depreciating any job, any gift, any desire, but I'm saying this to you. Get out of your pew and do something. It's not all about you. It's all about Him.